Okay, so I just want to do a quick review on Matthew Syed's his latest book, Rebel Ideas. I just finished this book today. It only took me a few days to get through it. I listened to it on Audible. It's an absolutely superb book. I've had an opportunity for a couple of days where I haven't been doing quite so much. I've been able to crack on with it nice and quickly. I get up with the kids at about 4 o'clock in the morning. I have a couple of hours there where I can crack through a good bit as well. So I do quite a bit of reading early on in the morning when I'm getting up early with them. So yeah, I've had a good opportunity to get through it, and it's really, really good. I can't recommend it enough. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about it without sort of doing any sort of spoilers or anything, because I think that's a bit of a shame. But yeah, it's narrated by Matthew Syed as well, which I think is really good. When you listen to an audiobook, to have the author narrate it as well, I think it adds an extra something. I think he's got a good voice as well. He's good to listen to. If you're into personal development books, it's quite nice to have an English accent as well. I've listened to a hell of a lot of personal development books, and a lot of them American, which is fine. I find American voices quite motivating, so I don't mind that at all. But some people struggle a bit more. So he's quite sort of solid and calm and reassuring to listen to, which is really good. I didn't know a hell of a lot about him. I've listened to Black Box Thinking as well, which I really, really enjoyed. I'm going to do a review on that at some point. That was a really good book as well. I think I probably preferred Rebel Ideas slightly. It felt a little bit more new to me. Black Box Thinking was something that I felt I already kind of knew to a certain extent. So I'm a consultant in social care. I've got my own sort of consulting and training business. But one of the things I'm passionate about is kind of not only sort of improving staff teams, but helping young people kind of get an idea about what it is they want to do. And I'm into really encouraging people, young people in particular, people of any age, but young people in particular, encouraging them to take on personal development, take on the responsibility of personal development, improve themselves, and really aim high, aim towards whatever it is they want to do. And I saw Matthew Syed being interviewed on YouTube, some book competition, I can't remember what it was now, but he's done a book for young people called You Are Awesome. I haven't read it, but I will give it a go at some point. I've got 2 young kids, so like I say, I'm quite passionate about this sort of stuff, and he was talking about what he considers to be so important with young people, that when they get an idea about they want to do something, they want to achieve something, they quite often get put off by the fear of failure. And I think that's something that's true for people all the way through their lives. And when it comes to being successful and ambitious and stuff, a lot of the advice is to push yourself, to fail, to get back up again and start again. And so it was really nice to hear him talk about something that I feel really passionate about as well. So I think that's why I'm kind of gravitating towards his book so much, and I really enjoyed this latest one. So I would quickly tell you why it's so important, this book. I do believe that this book is something that everyone, particularly in this country, should read at the minute, because I think we're facing kind of an epidemic at the minute of people being so kind of isolated in their viewpoints. People socialise online, they don't socialise as much, and when they do socialise, we naturally tend to socialise and meet with people who we agree with and who kind of flatter our own egos and don't really challenge us very much. And what this book is about is Rebel Ideas, so is about the importance of diversity in teams, for businesses, but also in people's lives personally as well. So if you want to improve yourself, then actually think outside the box by thinking about how people would think from other cultures rather than just your own. He gives the example of the CIA, and like I said, I won't ruin the book, but he talks about the CIA and the problems they had with 9/11, and the reason being that they were made up almost entirely of middle-class white men who educated to a really high standard, brilliant academic people, intelligent people, but actually came from the same sort of background and were just blind to the stuff that was kind of under their noses basically at the time. With hindsight, we can see it was quite obvious, but to them it wasn't obvious, and it wasn't necessarily their fault. It was just the fact that they weren't diverse enough. So the idea is that diversity is something that's really critical for performance. It's not just about being politically correct and about appeasing certain groups of people. It's actually about, if you want to do better, then you need to listen to people's ideas that are outside of your own comfort, in order to move you forward. It's the same in sport. If you are playing against people who are only as good as you or not as good as you, you're not going to improve. You need to be taken out of your comfort zone. So We need to listen to people's opinions. He also talks about human nature and the fact that we're very hierarchical by nature, which we are. There's lots of science to back that up, and we're scared to question authority. Even those of us who are quite sort of brave and courageous, I consider myself to be someone who isn't particularly scared of authority, and I feel as though that's kind of what's got me partly where I am today. I'm quite independent. I run my own business. And being a consultant, I can't afford to be too scared of people in so-called higher positions. I need to tell them as it is, and they can take it or leave it. So I tend to try and tell people, particularly in social care, it doesn't matter what your level is. If you've got something that you question or you're concerned about or you don't feel comfortable doing, then question it. It doesn't matter if whatever someone's title is, if they're a manager or a director, don't worry about that. You need to question it. And if you're not happy, then you might need to take it further, but that's another story. But anyway, we're very hierarchical by nature, and we do automatically fear kind of questioning people in authority. Even if we don't think we do, we naturally just tend to do that. And he gives the example of a disaster that happened on Everest years ago, where they were led by one leader who basically said to the team, what I say goes up here, and if you disagree with me, we'll talk about it afterwards, but at the time I don't want to hear any disagreements, which you can understand where he's coming from. He felt he had the most experience, and he probably well did, and he felt it was easier to do as I say, but actually it turns out that about 20 odd people died in the end. There was a storm, and it turns out that at least a couple of the people there had concerns about things that they didn't voice because they were too scared to question the guy for what felt like the right reasons at the time, and in the end it ended up in disaster. So that's a really interesting story as well. There's another story in there about racism, about a guy who was really kind of far right and basically racist. I won't ruin the story too much, but he ended up sort of coming around and speaking to people at university who brought him around. Basically, once he was exposed to a larger group of people, a more diverse group of people, he was intelligent enough to understand that perhaps on this situation or this argument he was wrong, and it opened his mind. So that I won't go on too much more about that. He talks about nutrition and how we still know so little about nutrition, and actually there's a lot of evidence to suggest that diets and nutrition are best if they're catered to people individually, because our systems are so unique and different from one another. But the main message of the book is to understand the importance of diversity, to get people on your team who might make you feel uncomfortable or who are from outside of your normal sort of sphere of thought, and actually we can grow from that. So at one point he talks about bringing in managers onto I can't remember if it was the cycling team or one of the British sports teams, where they brought in football managers and rugby managers and successful managers from all different sports, and you might have sort of thought, well, what the hell do they know about this particular sport? They specialise in football, they specialise in rugby, what do they know? Well, actually some of their psychology about certain things made a huge difference towards that team's success. So it's getting different people in and getting their fresh pair of eyes on the subject. Same as what I do in social care. When I go in, I'm a fresh pair of eyes into the homes that I go into, but even I in the end have the same kind of opinions quite often as the people I work with. So it'd be interesting for me to kind of think about that and kind of how we can get people from completely outside of social care who might have skills that we haven't even considered, who might come in and say, oh, well, why do you do things like that? Maybe we could try doing that. And at first you might sort of think, hang on a minute, it's done like that for a reason, but actually, oh, okay, fair enough. He talks about the guy who ended up putting wheels on suitcases, and at the time suitcases were lifted by sort of macho men who lifted them for their wives and stuff, and thinking outside the box and doing things that people won't necessarily agree with to begin with, but that's how to improve, that's how to create stuff. So yeah, and the big danger being social media and Facebook and things, where basically you would think that by having access to so many people's opinions would work in your favour, but actually what happens is with algorithms on Google and things, actually you're directed towards things that you like, things that you agree with, so you're almost taken even further away from the diversity that you need to keep you kind of on your toes, I suppose. He talks about going to universities where actually you might think the bigger university is, the more likely you are to be exposed to diversity and people from different backgrounds. Well, actually, the bigger a university is, the more likely you are to find people similar to you and kind of then group together and not actually experience that diversity. Whereas maybe in smaller universities where there's less people, you're probably more likely to, you've got less choice of people to sort of become friends with, maybe. So the chances are you might well come across someone from a different background. It's really, really interesting. Fantastic book, like I say, really well read, really well written. I didn't get bored at all. I often get bored at some point in a book, even if I think a book's good, and this one really held my imagination, my interest. I can't recommend it enough. So yeah, Rebel Ideas by Matthew Syed, highly recommended. Fantastic book. Thank you very much for writing it. It's really, really good.